Not understanding the basics of animation can seriously harm your progress as an animator, especially if you're just starting out.
Why isn't it working?
But don't panic, I'm here to show you the golden rules of animation that will take you from a simple beginner to an animation pro.
Please!
Although don't just take my advice, take it from these two visionaries that changed the animation world forever. Disney legends Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston developed the 12 principles of animation back in the 30s and 40s, and they're still used almost 90 years later by animators today. These principles are the golden rules for making your animations look amazing. So let's start by telling you about rule number 1. Squash and stretch is probably the most well-known of all the 12 principles. It's all about adding weight and volume to an object that's moving, usually during impact or deceleration. Think of a bouncing ball. As it hits the ground, you can squash the ball flat and widen it, creating the illusion that it's being distorted by an outside force. In characters, take a look at how Mario's face is being squashed and stretched during the impact. Even though this is a little exaggerated, it's still grounded in reality because it still follows this basic principle. In Blender, you can create bendy bones that mimic squash and stretch, and also preserve the object's volume, which can be adjusted or even turned off entirely. The second principle is anticipation. This is generally used to let your audience know that something is about to happen, like a wind-up before a big punch. The level of anticipation should match the intensity of the action. A small hop might have a subtle wind-up, while a powerful jump needs a more pronounced anticipation. Remember, anticipation is all about giving the audience a heads up and making your animations feel more dynamic and authentic. Principle number 3 is staging. Think of this like you're a big-time film director. Figure out where to place the camera, what to zoom in on, and what elements of the scene best tell your story. Different camera angles and composition help guide the viewer's attention and make it unmistakably clear to the audience what's happening. Using things like the rule of thirds and objects in the scene pointing directly at the action can help guide the viewer's attention to that piece of animation. Remember, effective staging helps convey the narrative, direct attention, and enhances the overall visual experience. It's a powerful tool in animation storytelling, and it shouldn't be underestimated. The fourth principle is straight ahead and pose to pose. These two methods of animating represent two sides to the animation coin, each tackling movement in a different way. When you're going straight ahead, you're animating frame by frame from start to finish. This method gives you a smooth flow and is perfect for animating fluid action. On the flip side, there's pose to pose. Here, animators start off by setting key poses and then fill in the gaps later. This is the typical approach when animating most acting or body mechanics shots, as it usually gives you the most control when creating these really complicated actions. It's good to keep in mind that the choice between pose to pose and straight ahead animation really depends on the thing that you're animating, and often a combination of both will really work well. Rule number 5 is follow through and overlapping action. These two animation principles are usually combined to really amp up the realism in your scene. Follow through is all about those body parts that keep on moving even when the character hits the brakes. They pull back towards the center of mass, just like in the real world. Just take a look at Mario and Luigi's legs in these different scenes. The more abrupt the stop, the more follow through is needed. Overlapping action in animation means taking different parts of the character and moving them at slightly different times. This creates a more natural and realistic look. Take Spidey's web swinging. Instead of all the body parts moving together like a robot, overlapping action adds a bit of delay to each part of the movement. For example, the head might move first, then the arms, then the legs. In Blender, you can use the graph editor to quickly retime different body parts by offsetting their animation curves, creating realistic follow through and overlapping action. Principle number 6 is slow ins and slow outs. This is often referred to as ease in and ease out. In the real world, objects have to accelerate before moving forward and decelerate before stopping. In this example, this is what's called linear animation, where the cube is moving at a constant speed. Now this is easing in and easing out. If we take a look at the graph editor and compare the two, we can see that the curve has changed from a straight line to more of an S shape. You can adjust the easing by first highlighting the keyframes and pressing T and changing the interpolation mode to Bezier. From here, you can move the Bezier handles to change the ease in and ease out duration. Principle number 7 is arc. In the real world, most actions naturally follow a curved path, whether it's swinging arms or legs or tossing something into the air. Movements following these natural arcs will help keep your animation smooth and keep it from looking unnatural. In Blender, it's easy to track the arcs of your object by heading over to the Object Properties panel and hitting Motion Path. From here, you can adjust the poses to make sure your animations are following a smooth arc. Secondary action in animation refers to any type of movement that supports the main action. It brings an extra level of depth and polish to your characters and objects. In this scene from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the secondary actions are the hand gestures and facial expressions in this conversational piece. In essence, a secondary action really enhances the overall storytelling and visual interest in a scene. Principle number 9 is timing and spacing. Now this one can be a little tricky to understand, so let me break it down simply. Timing is all about how fast or slow things are moving in your animation. For example, imagine a character waving. The timing determines if they wave quickly or slowly. Quick timing might seem like they're in a hurry, but slow timing might seem more casual. Spacing is all about the distance between frames. In animation, each frame is a snapshot of the action, and if you have more frames in a shorter span, it looks smoother and slower. And on the flip side, if you have fewer frames, it looks choppier and faster. Think of a bouncing ball. Closer frames when it's at the top and slower, spaced out frames at the bottom when it's faster. So timing and spacing work together to help control the pacing and feel of your animation, making your animations feel more dynamic and expressive. In Blender, you can adjust the timing by moving or scaling keyframes to make animation quicker or slower. You can also keep tabs on your spacing by using the motion path tool and taking a look at the white dots which represent the space between frames. Principle number 10 is exaggeration. And according to Disney, the trick with exaggeration is to crank it up to 11. Take the classic jaw drop move. When a character is hit with surprise or shock, animators don't settle for a mildly stunned look. Instead, they amp it up by dropping the character's jaw way beyond what's physically possible. Principle number 11 is solid drawing, and this principle is rooted in 2D animation. However, with 3D animation, animators need to keep in mind the posing and the silhouette of the character. This pose from Donkey Kong in the Mario movie is a perfect example of posing and silhouette working together. You can see exactly what Donkey Kong is doing and what is about to happen. One thing to avoid is something called twinning, which is creating a mirrored pose across to the other side, because it creates a really boring and unnatural and very unappealing pose. The 12th and final principle is arguably one of the most crucial. Just as directors look for the best actors in their films, animators strive to inject charm and charisma into their creations by using appeal. Now, there's no strict way of creating appealing characters. However, a common approach is to give them a round, childlike face, while heroes tend to have strong, angular features. A prime example is Bruno in Encanto. When his true nature is revealed, animators transform his shadowy, hunched appearance into a more sympathetic one, effectively shifting the appeal in alignment with the evolving role of his character in the story. And for sticking around this long, I've got something extra special for you. I've created a free PDF explaining these 12 principles in more detail with do's and don'ts when it comes to implementing them into your animations. And you can download this for free in the pinned comment below. We've only just started to scratch the surface of what it takes to create amazing animations. And if you want to dive even deeper, make sure to subscribe to learn all the incredible things that will make you a pro. So now you know the basics of animation, but where do you start? Check out this video all about how to get started with animation in Blender.